unto others as you would have, as you.
This is James Deal, coming to you from Linwood, Washington. Today is May the 6th, 2018. And this is the JR-Deal-News. That song you were listening to, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Hey, Mr. Rich Guy, I'm talking to you. Hey, big company, I'm talking to you. Hey, big government, I'm talking to you too. Do unto others applies to all. Hey, Mr. Rich Guy, I'm talking to you. Hey, Monsanto, where's your code? Your code of ethics, you should have one. Hey, you fraudulent seller of carcinogenic Roundup, Monsanto, where's your code? Profits must be goal number 2, after doing something good for the world. Hey, ExxonMobil, look up, not down, to solar and wind and wave. Stop drilling now. The future is green. Be a big green energy company. Hey, ExxonMobil, stop your frackin' ways. Your methane is even worse than your CO2. Quit poisoning the water. Quit poisoning the air. Be a big green energy company. Hey, Shell Oil, how much did you spend? $8 billion in the Chukchi Sea? You left, you said there was no oil, but really, there's a lot. It was Mother Nature's storms that drove you off. $8 billion would build enough solar power to permanently power 230,000 homes. Polluting the world is not only morally wrong, long term it makes absolutely no financial sense. You can make a tidy profit without fracking up the world. Do unto others applies to all. Hey, cattle rancher, take your beeves off the public lands. Give the buffalo and the wolf a place to roam. Profits must be goal number 2, after doing something good for the world. Do unto others applies for our descendants, our duty to those billions yet unborn, our sons and our daughters for the next 10,000 years. Do unto others applies to all. Do unto our Mother Earth as you would have them be a home for your children. So that's do unto others, also known as Stop Drilling Now by James Robert Deal. And when I'm through talking, I'll play that song again so you can hear the whole thing. So, this has been an important week for the smart meter opposition. I finally found a press release organization that would publish my press release. And so I published it through PRE, and they made me edit it down to where it said almost nothing. So as soon as I published that press release, I got an email from PRI, from EIN Presswire, and they only charge $49, and it seems like they have really good coverage, and they didn't edit my press release at all. So go to jamesrobertdeal.org/smart meters, smart-meters, and there's a carousel going by, and you'll catch the press release and the demand to the city of Seattle as the carousel goes by. So in the press release, I focused on the major issues, and I quoted from myself, really, but paraphrased from what I've learned from Sam Milham, who lives in Olympia. And Milham's the author of a book called Dirty Electricity. Just do Google for Dirty Electricity and buy the book. It's well worth reading. And what I learned from it was that the millimeter wave, microwave, from cell phones, cell towers, Wi-Fi's, baby monitors, smart meters, is not the only type of electromagnetic radiation that can cause harm. The other is down in the lower end of the frequency bands. Instead of 900 megahertz, which is 0.9 gigahertz, up to 3 or 4 gigahertz, which is the range for everything from cell phones up to 4G Wi-Fi, down around 50,000 hertz, 50 kilohertz. And 20 kilohertz. There's harmful microwave radiation. And the smart meter produces a lot of it. Produces dirty electricity at many different frequencies. So the electricity is coming in at 60 cycles a second, but it's going back on the neutral wire at many different frequencies. And different frequencies occupy the wire differently and occupy different parts of the wire. I don't fully understand it, but if you have multiple frequencies running through a wire, you're going to need a bigger wire. But our neutral wire is not big enough, so as soon as the return current goes back to the utility pole, it goes to ground. Every utility pole is now grounded, which isn't the way it was in the beginning. There used to be a straight shot back to the power plant to complete the circuit. The circuit has to be completed. So instead of installing larger neutral wires, what was done is we just started diverting the electricity, the return electricity, into the ground. And from there, it migrates through the ground back to the generating plant, which means that the entire civilized world is electrified. And he says it's electrified at anywhere from 4 volts to 10 volts. So there is no true ground in the ground anymore. And from people like Sam Milham, you learn examples that are impossible to refute about how the harmful nature of microwave radiation and electromagnetic radiation. And the people who say there's no double-blind studies confirming are basically saying there are no studies confirming that people can tell when the Wi-Fi is on and the Wi-Fi is off. I'm talking about people who claim to be electromagnetically sensitive. And maybe that's true, because when a person has been, for example, chemically harmed, they don't immediately perceive relief when they are no longer drinking that chemical. And of course, I'm thinking of fluoride, which is cumulative in your effect, and this is the same way with microwave radiation. So their only argument, possible argument, is that people can't perceive when they're being blasted by electromagnetic radiation. But they can't dispute the fact that we're being harmed by it. So what I've got to tell you is that the people who do perceive it are not malingerers. They're the canaries in the mine, and you need to pay attention to them instead of ignoring them, which is what the city of Seattle does with their smart meter rollout. And bear in mind that the effect is cumulative, and the cancers are going to come when you're in your 40s and 50s or 60s. It's not something that immediately is going to cause you to have cancer, but if you talk on that cell phone with it up against your ear, like John McCain, eventually you may have brain cancer. So one of the things I pointed out in the press release is that you need to check with your insurance company to see if you're covered by, number one, the smart meter radiation, the surges caused when a smart meter fails and allows a surge to enter your house. And the other type of coverage to be concerned about is harms caused by the magnetic radiation itself, which would be the brain cancer. So for the number one type of coverage, which is when the wires get crossed, trees fall, the voltage gets doubled from 240 to 480. The old-fashioned analog meter could handle that surge and divert it through the spark gap surge protector into ground and save your house. But 480 volts hits the smart meter. The smart meter contains a varistor, which is a non-grounded surge protection system that's absorptive instead of divertive. So anything over 300 volts and it explodes. And so the meter catches on fire, and maybe your house catches on fire, and now there's a direct connection into your house for up to 2,000 amps. So that's a surge. And the question is, your computer gets fried, your refrigerator gets fried, your electrical, musical equipment all get fried. Is that covered? So I talked to my insurance agent, and she assures me that our home policy does cover that. But then I said, well, I work from home. Check the other policy, because I have two policies. Because the computers I work with and the new microphone over which I'm talking to you is not covered by my home policy because I use it for other purposes. So sure enough, she found the paragraph, and it specifically excludes damage caused by surges entering the house. She said that she would go to the company and get pricing on a rider so that it would be covered. So, business owners, listen. This is not just a left-wing liberal issue. Your expensive $1,000, $1 million equipment in your business is probably not insured unless your insurance agent talked to you about getting a rider to make sure that it is covered. And also have to talk about the opt-out procedures. If you own your own home, you can opt out in Seattle, and I think it's about $120 to start with, and thereafter it's a monthly fee. But if you're a renter, you can't opt out if your landlord doesn't consent. So 1 to 4 family can opt out, but if it's a rental, those can only opt out if the landlord agrees. 5 units and up cannot opt out according to Seattle's rules. If you're a business, if you're a school, if you're a church, you cannot opt out. If you have a solar roof, you cannot opt out. These rules are strange and make no rational sense. One of the headlines I also put in the press release was that in New Hampshire, customers no longer have to opt out. If the utility company wants to put a smart meter on your house, they have to get you to opt in. And that's because the easement that was given to the utility companies, either by you or your predecessor in ownership, doesn't cover anything that wasn't originally contemplated when the easement was originally given. So the scope of the easement is not unlimited, and this is basic easement law. So somebody gets an easement to cross your land to go to their home, and then they decide to build a gravel pit back there, and they need access for dump trucks. Sorry, the easement isn't good for that. So there's a scope of the easement. The language in the Washington courts is that easements cannot impose a, quote, greater burden than originally contemplated, unquote. Utility easements granted to utility companies contemplated a grounded, surge-protected, and fireproof meter. Therefore, smart meters exceed the scope of the easement granted, and imposing them on unwilling customers is a trespass. And because we're all gradually being harmed, it's a battery. and because some people, the 3% who are electrosensitive, perceive it, it's also an assault. So it's illegal in itself because it doesn't comply with the National Fire Safety Act and the National Fire Code and the National Fire Safety Code. They're illegal. And they're also a trespass. So how can you force people to do it? Well, these are arguments that most of the anti-smart meter people have completely missed. They focus on trying to prove that it's harmful to people. Well, it's sort of hard to prove that. And the municipal governments are given a great deal of latitude when it comes to exercising their judgment over and making choices, balancing choices. Some things are going to hurt people, like spraying Roundup on the streets to kill the weeds. Even though that washes into the Sound and kills salmon, the city still has the right to do it, unless there's some specific law you can find that says otherwise. Now, I got a call from a nice lady in Michigan, and she's being taken to court. She had to pay an $800 fine, or she would have had to stay in jail, and for refusing to have a smart meter. So she's got a trial coming up on May 15th, and she's got a court-appointed attorney, public defender, and he's petitioned to get out of the case. And so I don't know how the judge can force her to come to trial on a criminal matter when she doesn't have an attorney. Now, I will try to contact that public defender. He doesn't answer her phones, and ask him if I can make an appearance. And in any case, I'm going to send my demand to the city of Seattle to the judge and say this is an amicus brief, and I'm making a motion that you accept this amicus brief, because I think that I can do that even though I'm not licensed to practice law in Michigan. Maybe educating the judge will help him see that he's on the wrong side of justice. So, I do check my emails during these programs. There's been some discussion about smart meters used in gas metering and for water metering. And apparently what they're doing is they're using the electric power lines themselves to conduct the report of usage back to the supplier. And apparently this creates a lot of dirty electricity. And I don't know enough about hypersensitivity to know if those who are hypersensitive are sensitive to both the high-frequency millimeter waves or just to the low-frequency dirty electricity, or if one group is not sensitive to the other one. So I'm learning as I go. Nobody else was doing this project, so I'm taking this on myself to stand up and say it's illegal. So I get this email from a nice lady in Israel who keeps up with what's going on here, and tells me that in San Jose, that's as in California, not Costa Rica, they are installing about 1,000 LED public lights on the streets, which include Wi-Fi. And I think maybe they have cameras. So, and let's see, I have one here from Pilgrim Peace, who is in Central Hudson. And the important thing, I think, if you're going to try to break through the wall of indifference, is to go to jamesrobertdeal.org/smart-meters and look for the press release on the carousel going by and use those points and hammer on those points. It's a trespass, and it doesn't comply to the National Fire Code and the National Fire Safety Code. So, also accomplished today, I sent the press release by email to the newsroom at Everett Herald, and Mr. Pattison, Neil Pattison, replied and said thanks for the tip, because the PUD here is planning to install smart meters in the next 3 years. I think they just don't understand the issues. I don't know what their motivation is, but I went to make an appearance to them and explained it to them, and I think they understood. So I made application that I be allowed to keep my analog meter for my solar roof. I spent $25,000 to put in a solar roof, and then I found out that they have a rule that says if you have a solar roof, you cannot have an analog meter, and a solar roof requires 2 meters, and one is to report your total usage, and the other is to report the amount of power that the solar roof produced. That's called a production meter. So they can subtract and give you a credit, and maybe give you money back at the end of the year. Well, they insist on you having 2 electronic meters. Now, there's a difference between a smart meter and a simple electronic meter. The electronics have been out since maybe the year 2000, and Seattle has a lot of those. It'll say Itron on the outside, and or GE, and they don't report. They don't have the radio for receiving or sending, but they're little computers, and they're not grounded, and they're not surge protected, and they produce stray current, dirty electricity. So they don't comply with the National Fire Code and the National Fire Safety Code. So it's illegal to. What I'm going to argue to them is that they can't force me to accept a meter that's illegal and is a trespass. Now, hope is coming for you folks who live in apartment buildings not allowed to opt out. One of the goals of the nonprofit organization of which I am the leader, known as the Coalition Against Smart Meters and 5G. One of our goals is to outline a legal case and then find a big firm that does class action suits, environmental-oriented suits, and sue, because that seems to be sometimes the only thing that a city in the position of Seattle will pay attention to. And the legal case is a good one. It's a Consumer Protection Act case, so the attorneys should be able to get an award of attorney fees. Now, all of you smart meter fighters out there, I'm going to encourage you to keep a diary of all the work that you're doing against these smart meters. And what I contemplate, it might even be a class action suit that's in multiple states. And keep track of your time, and if I have anything to do with it, I'll see that you get paid for all the work that you've done. It would be proper to do this because you're actually gathering information or understanding the issues, actually presenting the case outside of court. So keep track of all your time, and if I have anything to do with the case, then I'll see that you are reimbursed. Now, the position I see myself in is that not the lead trial attorney in any sense, but maybe the organizing attorney, the conceptual overall advising attorney. And my job is to understand the science and understand the law and try to connect them together. Believe me, I've spent many hundreds of hours studying this issue. And the typical lawyer would look at you really confused if you went in and said, I'd like you to take my case. So it's a big subject to try to understand the law and the science and put them together, find the right expert to testify as to the law. Before I go, I want to remind you that throughout the state of Washington, I'm a real estate attorney and a real estate broker. Now, if you're a broker with a transaction that's commercial, that is a sale of land, a seller carry, a lease option, a wraparound, a deed of trust deal, a business sale, and you've never done one of those, and you need to bring an attorney in anyway, well, bring me in as real estate broker and real estate attorney, and I'll provide the service of helping you prepare the agreements and get it through to closing and agree on a flat fee payable at closing. So I can work either as an attorney or as a broker, because I'm both. And there's advantages to one and the other, but I'm covered with E&O insurance both as an attorney and as a lawyer. If you are thinking that you would like to buy, but you feel like you don't have enough income, you know you don't have enough income, think about buying in partnership, because you can go up to a 4-family, 4-unit, 4-plex, and still get FHA financing and only 3.5% down. So get together a group of 4 buyers or 4 couples or as many incomes as possible. Then you can qualify with a low down payment. If you're buying a 4-plex, you have your privacy. If you're buying one big house with many owners, you need, in addition to a partnership agreement, you need a house sharing agreement. And I'll provide a draft of those as well. So don't give up on owning property. It's a good thing to do if you can. So I'm going to close out and return to the garden where I'm helping my wife. She's planting beans today, and I do the digging. So I promised you I would play that song again as I go out. So here it comes again.
Unto others as you would have them do unto you. Hey, Mr. Rich Guy, I'm talking to you. Hey, big company, I'm talking to you. Hey, big government, I'm talking to you too. Do unto others applies to all. Hey, Monsanto, where's your code? Your code of ethics, you should have one. Hey, you fraudulent seller of carcinogenic Roundup, Monsanto, where's your code? Profits must be goal number 2 after doing something good. ExxonMobil, look up, not down, to solar and wind and wave. Stop drilling now, the future is green. Be a big green energy company. Hey, ExxonMobil, stop your fracking ways. Your methane is even worse than your CO2. Quit poisoning the water, quit poisoning the air. Be a big green energy company. Hey, Shell Oil, how much did you spend? $8 billion in the Chuck E. Cheese Sea. You left, you said there was no oil, but really there's a lot. It was Mother Nature's storms that drove you off. $8 billion would build enough solar power to permanently power 230,000 homes. Polluting the world is not only morally wrong, long term it makes absolutely no financial sense. You can make a tiny profit without fracking up the world. Do unto others applies to all. Hey, cattle rancher, take your beeves off the public land. Give the buffalo and the wolf a place to roam. Profits must be goal number 2 after doing something good for the world. And do unto others applies for our descendants, our duty to those billions yet unborn, our sons and our daughters for the next 10,000 years. Do unto others applies for all. And do unto our Mother Earth as you would have her be a home for your children.